Guys ready? Yep. All right. We'll now call the January 23rd, 2024 plan meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Hannah here.
Rillo here.
Kipchinsky here.
Lorick here.
David here.
Guzikowski here.
Oldani here.
Seifert here.
Okay, well, welcome to 2024 and the first planning meeting of the year. So we do have to look back on 2023, December 12th minutes. So if everybody take a few moments. And if there's no further discussions, questions, omissions, or errors, motion.
Oldani moves to accept the minutes of the meeting of Tuesday, December 12th, 2023.
Guzikowski will second.
Roll call.
Hannah, I.
Rillo, aye.
Kipchinsky, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Okay, that will get us to review and discuss recent Common Council actions. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Common Council approved ordinance number 3091, which amended section 6.01 of the municipal code, amending the official map for portions of the northeast quarter, northwest quarter, and southeast quarter of section 30, affecting the mapped unimproved right-of-way for the properties at 9900 South Ridgeview Drive, 9970, 10,020, 10,040 South 20th Street, and 1800 and 1850 West Oakwood Road. Also approved ordinance 3092, approving a conditional use permit for a veterinary clinic on the property at 8907 South Howell Avenue. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any comments or discussions? Okay, moving right along, item 5, review and discuss a report on the recent Board of Housing and Zoning appeals and actions. There are currently none. And item 6 is to review and discuss a report on the recent quarterly Parks and Recreation Commission actions. We will receive that April 23rd, 2024. That'll get us into old business. Item 7A, there is a note, there will be no report, as the applicant has a request that this item be held till the February 13th meeting. So moving right ahead, we'll go on to new business. Item A is a review of site, building, and related plans by John Schluter, Frontline, for a multi-tenant manufacturing development on the properties at 9970, 10020, and 10040 South 20th, and a portion of 1850 West Oakwood Road. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This property or series of properties is affected by a couple of previous reviews and approvals. So currently zoned M1 PUD, that PUD was approved on December 19th of last year. There was also a certified survey map to combine and reconfigure the properties that was approved by the council on actually I think that might have been a different date, but it does say the 12th of December, so it was approved in December of 2023. The official map amendment was approved on January 16th of this year, and that was affecting the access to the property and, of course, the cul-de-sac that was discussed at length. So the proposal that is before the Plan Commission tonight is for the development of the site itself, and it's for a multi-tenant speculative industrial building. On the screen right now is the proposed site plan showing the building, the access, the parking, and the pond on the south side. It's not the full extent of the property that was reconfigured by the CSM. It's just cutting off that southern part below the south pond. So we're going to split this up into two sections for ease of review. The northern portion is in the blue box, and the southern portion is in the orange box. So on the north, what we have are parking stalls for passenger vehicles. And we also have a portion of the building. The access is from the north, it's from Ridgeview Drive only. All setbacks with the building and the parking are met. Wetland permits for the impacts on the site are currently pending through the DNR. On the north, we do have a series of loading dock doors, and that is highlighted in the orange box on the screen. More loading docks are on the south. So as we move to the south here, you'll see that there is access that is all around the building. That's for both fire access and for truck access to the rear. There's 3 series of potential dock areas with loading docks and then 15 parking stalls on the south for trucks and trailers. On the screen is a location for one of 2 proposed dumpster enclosures. And just want to talk a moment about the trash enclosures themselves. While we do have 2 located here, we did not receive plans, so we will need to have elevations and dimensions for those proposed trash enclosures. There was one suggestion that staff made, and that was to move the trash enclosure that is in the red box further east to be more away from the existing residential properties to the south. That's for noise and for light and just, traffic there. We feel that it would be located, best located away from those residential properties. There are also in the boxes, the blue box is where the truck and trailer parking stalls are located. The green are passenger vehicle stalls. So talking about parking in total for the property, this is an industrial facility, which would require per code 1 stall for every 1,500 square feet. We do recognize that there is a portion of the building that will be dedicated to office at some point. And it's difficult to know exactly what type of use is going to be in this facility, but just general industrial requirements are 1 for every 1,500 square feet. So that would be a total of 286 stalls that would be required. We did receive a modification request, an adjustment for the Plan Commission's consideration. There are 181 stalls provided. So that would be at the Plan Commission's discretion to determine whether or not the provided stalls would be sufficient for this review. There is a transition zone D, which is the largest that will be along the south side. That's due to the fact that this does abut a residential neighborhood, and we'll talk more about that once we get to the landscape plans, which are on the screen currently. So we're going to break this up into quadrants to make it a little bit easier to review as well. So starting with the northeast corner, that's where the access comes in off of Ridgeview Drive and where the majority of the parking stalls are proposed. So the larger depiction here are the landscape islands and the areas that are adjacent to the building, as well as the access drive. And then on the right-hand side, it's a little bit difficult to get the entirety of the east portion of the building, but this is showing that there is additional foundation plantings as well as landscaping on the east side of the access drive there. You'll note that there is an existing billboard easement, and the billboard is kind of depicted on this side, if you can follow my cursor. So landscaping will be planted at that base. Turning now to the northwest, so kind of going counterclockwise, we do see additional landscaping adjacent to those loading dock areas and the building, also around the proposed pond, and then same as we did just for the east side, we do have the access drive. A little bit less vegetation on this side, but that is interior to the existing South Branch Park, so that's abutting an adjacent industrial property. Less landscaping there, no transition zone required. Same along the north, although there are parking stalls along the north, which is why you do see more landscaping there. And then continuing down to the southwest, you do see again the landscaping that is proposed around the trash enclosure unless it moves, and then that landscaping will follow that. Some landscaping additional on that corner. And what we also have here is the beginning of Transition Zone D, because that's where the residential portion begins. So there's a bit of a berm there with landscaping extensive there on that southeast corner or southwest corner. Then there is the pond that kind of has the beginnings of the grading that goes up there. So there has to be a clear spot for the water to kind of sheet into it. And then transitioning over into the truck parking area, there are landscape elements there. And then on the southern side of the pond, we do have the extensive landscaping, particularly when it comes to the tree preservation and replacement area. Before we talk about that, just continuing the landscape plans to the southeast. Again, that Transition Zone D is continuing along the south. more landscaping in the islands in between the loading dock areas, around the parking areas, and around the trash enclosure. And then, of course, the foundation plantings and the continuation of the plantings along the east. So when we talk about the tree inventory, I did not show that on the screen, but there was one provided. 83 trees on the property are proposed to be removed. Over 50 will be saved. That would equate to 261 required replacement trees. Now, because the code requires the tree inventory to include replacements that are not counted for other areas that are required in code. So in other words, we cannot count the trees that are required elsewhere for landscaping in the islands, for parking lot screening, or for other transition zones or landscape areas. So there are 221 trees that are provided outside of that area, and while, particularly south of the pond, while that is a little bit less than what would be required, we do note that this is an extensive replanting area. Throughout the site, we do have extensive trees, and even though we are not necessarily counting the trees that are required for landscaping for the islands and such, that's a lot of trees. So the staff feeling is that this plan is sufficient to meet all of the requirements of code. We are not seeking an additional 40 trees to meet the exact number that would be required. If we counted all the trees on the site, it would exceed 261. So this is the location where most of that replacement area is, extensive trees around that pond area, and then filling the rest of the property that is around the residential portion that was part of that CSM. There would be a couple of modifications that are required for the landscape plans as well. Mechanical units were not shown. Those need to be cited just whenever the building actually starts. And once tenants come in, that will determine what exactly will be needed in terms of whether there are rooftop units or just ground units. So those will need to be screened per code. The other portion that will need to be changed, modifications to the landscape plans are typical. So we'll need the heights of the plants at installation and maturity. Right now we just have a single. And then the soil depths for the landscape islands, a little bit less than what's required by code. So that's just a simple modification. We don't have any major concerns with that. That's pretty typical. Just one other note with the landscape plans in the transition zone D. Per code, technically there is a requirement for there to be a fence combined with landscaping for that 15-foot area. However, as you know, on the southeast we do have areas where not only is it a transition zone and screening is required for those parking stalls that are there, we do have a portion of the pond, so we do need to take into consideration the drainage patterns for the site. If we were to require a fence, that might be challenging due to the fact that we are seeing a proposal for a landscape berm, landscape area, and we do need to account for the drainage. So staff is supportive of the plans showing vegetative screening rather than a combination of vegetation and fencing. So that's one thing for the Plan Commission to consider in your approvals as well. Turning now to the building, we do have a couple of elevations to take a look at. The majority of the building is proposed to be constructed with painted precast panels. And then we do have composite metal accents that are at the northeast corner and above the entrances. A little bit difficult to show on the screen, but they are incorporated into the corner elevations and above the entrances on the north, which are shown on the screen right here. Windows throughout each of the entrances are going to be identified with awnings or canopies or sunshades. That was a recommendation. It's a little bit unclear in these elevations whether or not they're included, but we did get some information from the applicant's representative that those will be incorporated. The use of concrete panels per code does require a majority approval of the Plan Commission. And staff is supportive of the design overall. The loading docks, of course, are shown on all the north and south elevations, and there are windows that are shown on all. We don't have lighting plans that are presented in the presentation tonight. However, we do have a couple of requirements that are per code, and that is the change between the north and the south, possibly even the east and the west if there are a few lights there. We need to ensure that anything that is presented on the south end that is adjacent to residential meet the limitations of 3500 Kelvin, be shielded on the side of the fixture that is facing the residential area, and also all the lights need to be presented or turned downward, so they're facing the ground rather than having any kind of uplighting or projected lighting. So right now on the screen, we have a couple of renderings for the buildings. So this is on the northeast corner, just kind of continuing down that elevation on the north, just giving you a couple of different perspectives and different times of day to take a look at this. With that information in mind and understanding that the staff will work with the applicant to address some of those conditions that have been presented in the suggested motion, there is a multi-part suggested motion for Plan Commission consideration. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Before we go on to the commission, applicant, you want to say a few words or wait on questions? Name and address, please.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the Plan Commission. Attorney Brian Randall of Amundsen Davis, 111 East Kilbourne Avenue in Milwaukee, here on behalf of the applicant, Frontline. Our full team is here this evening. John Schlieder from Frontline, Matt Mono, who's the architect, Andrew Mertz, the civil engineer, and I think there are a couple of neighbors as well. John did meet with the neighbors, went door to door early on in the process. I think at one point I told you that we had many meetings to go and it was a long time away. Well, here we are in January. That long time away is finally before us. I would note on the condition number 2, Carrie was correct. The Common Council met not on December 12th, but December 19th was the date of that meeting. So for your condition, we can work with all these conditions. I think Carrie mentioned that we had verbally indicated everything we can work through as far as when tenants are identified, where those mechanicals will be, where the dumpsters will be, and indeed they will be screened. We would ask for the parking adjustment because we don't want to overpark this site. We don't believe all those code requirement spots are needed, so 181 is what we're showing. We're very pleased to present the 221 trees that we're putting on the site and appreciate your approval that that's enough. Really, though, the emphasis, as that plan sheet showed, we're trying to screen to the south where all the neighbors who are residents are and have that additional land, which we bought both for stormwater but for screening, will serve that purpose. We would ask that the approval as presented for our berm and plantings concept and not have to do the fence as well, because I think that's just too much going on down there and we're putting our best foot forward with the landscape screening. And then the building design as approved by the Plan Commission. Matt has done a really nice job working through how we can present ourselves to the freeway, have that corner element be very attractive, but also a functional building for lots of jobs and lots of activity inside the building, while very few truck loading docks and truck staging area. It's going to be an active inside operation. So with that, if there are any questions, our team will come up. I know some of the neighbors may have comments or questions, but we're very excited about the project. We appreciate all the approvals. It has been a number of steps, but we've successfully worked through all those, certainly with you and staff. Even though you lost an important staff member along the way. We all miss Doug, but nonetheless, Carrie's doing a great job, and city engineering, we appreciate everyone's assistance. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Brian. We do have some audience members here, so I will invite them up if they'd like to make a comment or question at this time before we go to the commission. Well, if something comes up, ladies, just feel free. Name and address, sir.
Wayne Majeski, 10220 South Judith Place. I looked at the map, and there's a lot of loading docks that are facing towards our houses and stuff. Is this going to be a 24-hour process and stuff? Because I know, like, Reinhardt and stuff, they actually put the berm there with some trees and stuff up on there to accommodate for noise and stuff, for like the spotter trucks and stuff, because we can still hear the beeping noise when they're backing up and stuff. So I just wanted to know if this is going to be a 24-hour operation for these loading docks, or how is this going to work with what's going in there and stuff?
I'll let the applicant, I mean, as of right now, they don't have tenants that I know of. So I think it would depend on the business that eventually leases it. But I'll let the tenants speak to that, and also to the berm. There is a berm going in, so we'll invite them back up. Questions?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, with that, we'll go to the commission. We'll start with you, Christine.
So, actually, the question is for you, Carrie. On Oakwood Road, east of 13, there is a sign that there is certain tonnage and no trucking allowed on 13 east of, I'm sorry, on Oakwood, east of 13. Yes, on Oakwood, east of 13. So how is the trucking is gonna be limited or accessing west of Oakwood?
There's no access to Oakwood from these properties. They'd have to go through Ridgeview, through South Branch, up 20th Street, or out to 27th Street.
Can you share that on the screen so I can see?
So Ridgeview Drive is the only access that's on the north, and there's no access through down to Judith Place to Oakwood Road. So it would have to go north through South Branch, and that would connect from Ridgeview Drive up to 20th Street, and they'd have the option of going either east or west. They could go, well, they could go east and then north up 20th Street to get to Ryan Road, or they could go west and go on 20th Street out to 27th Street. There's no access to Oakwood Road.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
Dawn?
Building looks really nice. I don't have any questions at this time.
Ashley?
So engineering has done the preliminary review of the stormwater, provided comments to the designer, no concerns with any of that that's been presented. One item to note that Carrie had mentioned in the report where the driveway does access the site, if we could just maybe work together to get that to look more like a driveway approach or something. So just maybe go back and forth on that. That's really it. Thank you.
Greg?
I guess my first question would be regarding parking. I know we always bring up parking in these meetings. And if I heard you correctly, by code, it's required to have 286 spots,
Correct. That's
there-
one for every 1,500 square feet.
and they're proposing 181, so a reduction of 105 spots. Does the applicant, do they have a prospective tenant that they know that that's going to be enough parking already? Or if you don't know who's going to be in the building, how certain are you that that's truly going to be enough if you're reducing it by 100 spots?
Good evening, everybody. Our manufacturing,
Name and address.
I'm so sorry, John Schleter, 7265 South First Street, Oak Creek. Our business, Keeter Solutions, which has been on First Street for over 10 years, needs this additional space. And we have a very good feeling. We're looking to take 1/3 of the building. And just based on our relatively small needs, we have big storage needs, machine needs that are somewhat automated. We don't, I would say that's the biggest reason we don't need those additional 100 spots. And then to the trucking, I can speak to the trucking.
Oh, please.
We only have first shift, loading and unloading, and you're right, Mayor, I can't speak at this point to the other tenant.
Okay, and the berm. The berm to the south, height, and of course it'll be vegetated as well.
It will be vegetated. As I recall, it's 8 feet. It looks like we're checking right now. I believe that's 8 feet tall with significant vegetation and then the 3 acres of vegetation beyond that.
Thank you.
So yeah, I guess as far as the parking, if the rest of the commission and staff are comfortable, I'd be comfortable. I hesitate to set precedent of reducing it by, that's over 35% reduction. I don't want to set a precedent that we're reducing parking everywhere like that. as far as the trees, not exactly hitting that number. I'm supportive of it, just looking at the plans. I don't know that you can cram any more trees in the area that they're really focusing on. And I don't know how much more value they would be to the north. I mean, that's just facing another industrial park. So a little concerned about the 40 trees that are missing there. I think that was it. Other than that, I don't really have any questions.
Okay. Chris?
I concur with Alderman Lork's comments.
Okay. Don?
No comments at this time.
Fred?
I just have a little concern about how do we protect the neighbors to the south from trucking actually ending up going on that direction with future development.
To the
I
south?
see that you've got a finger on the south and you still have some more growth. I'm just wondering, is there a way to protect the residents from, if you do develop, how do we keep truck traffic still going north and nothing going south?
Thanks, Mayor. So this is what we are developing, and on the screen right now shows that we don't have any access to the south.
Right.
And then I think what you were first asking about is the land we're buying to the south, which we're putting the trees in. That through our PUD approval, and I was going to see if that was which condition it was, but we also through the zoning that the council has already approved and you recommended, we restrict ourselves to that use is just for the landscaping and the stormwater. So we cannot, unless there were a multi-step amendment process to change the use of that area to ever build a building or even a parking lot. That is not our intent, which is why we both restricted it in the PUD zoning and we're showing that's where the majority of those 200 some trees are going to be. So we don't have a building planned, we don't have access planned, and we don't want that. Because we know the neighbors don't want that either.
Thank you. I'm just worried about the neighbors, concerned about those people. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did I skip over you? Okay. Fred, you still got the floor.
That's it for me.
Don, you got something?
You coming?
Yeah. Carrie, this is for you. If I remember correctly, we only rezoned that area where the pond is, the retaining pond there. Is that correct? I'm trying to remember the zoning, what it looked like, because it was kind of a puzzle a little bit.
So on the screen right now is the portion that got rezoned. So that includes the pond and it includes the sort of an L shape around the existing residence from which that portion was carved off.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Greg?
Just one last question. It sounds like you're accepting of all the conditions. I just wanted to confirm that you're okay moving the trash enclosure away from the residential. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Fire?
All right, good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, Mike Habe with Fire. The site plan, we don't have any issues with it, but I think there's probably some closure needed with the fire department access that has come up before in questions. And I just want to reiterate, Judith Place is not wide enough in a current condition to be considered a fire department access road, nor does it meet the static load requirements as when it was built. So I think there's been some conjecture and discussion about that, but today's conditions, it does not meet the requirements that we could even consider it as a secondary access road. So I just wanted to close that out in case there are any questions. Other than that, I have nothing. If there's any questions from the commissioners.
Access looks good from a fire department point of view.
Yes.
And then are you that far to have gotten the plan on fire risers? And
So yeah, the building site, we haven't had those submitted yet. However, just based on the size of it, there'll be alarm notification systems in there and suppression systems.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
From my point of view, I'll just briefly touch on the stuff. It's a lot of trees. I don't know the difference between a grove of trees and a forest of trees. But this probably qualifies to be one of them on the south side. It's a lot of trees, so I'm okay with the tree reduction and the landscaping that went on beyond it. Trash enclosure has been addressed. The parking was the big thing. Oh, yes, come on up, ma'am. Sorry, I missed you. Name and address, please, and you can pull the microphone down.
Sure. Okay. My name is Kaylee Kujak. I live at 10108 South Duluth Place. I want to talk about the trees. I'm a little bit blindsided, so give me a minute. I was aware that there was going to be a lot of trees. I was not aware that they were going to be south of the pond. So here, the closest house is getting the least amount of trees. So I'm a little bit like, whoa, okay. I mean, I know there is a lot of trees, but we're also doing less and less by the closest house. So I'm going to need a minute to digest that.
Okay.
And then, no offense, as you guys are aware, I have little children by this pond. There's going to be, I mean, I do my best. I'm an only parent. If, God forbid, I have child locks, I have 3 locks on my doors, but if something were to ever happen, I just want everyone to be aware that I stood here and I did ask for a fence around that pond. And then an 8-foot berm, I went past the building on 13th, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is a big building. So I'm just, you know, compared to Reinhardt, they've got it's like a 30-foot berm. I'm not sure exactly, but I'm thinking like 8 feet to like a 30-foot. I could be wrong, maybe 20. I don't know, but I'm just a little bit concerned on the size of blockage of having a big building right there. And I had the garbage, but we've already went over that. And then... Yeah, my main concern is just the tree placement being south of the pond when that is more blocking the neighbors off of Oakwood Road and not Judith Place. There's a great amount of space there, but for me, I'm going to be outside staring at a building. And I don't know the size of these trees. I don't know if it's going to take, 10 years to even get any shielding or anything, so that's just my concerns.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll try to address and take a best guess estimate, and if anybody can help me out, you, Ashley, I'd appreciate it. Concerning the trees, probably on the south side, and we're talking specifically on the southwest side, correct? South of the pond. Can you put that up? It is.
So all
it's
the
south
trees
of
are
the building.
below the pond.
It'd be a little west of the pond.
Yeah, there's some west, like southwest, like along my property.
We're talking about this group. Oh, you can't see what I'm pointing at, can you? Either way, that's really probably the drainage point it's where Judith Place ends, basically. Correct?
So the majority of the trees are actually going to be
right
down
in,
there.
That's south side we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, they are doing a lot of trees, but in the wrong spot.
I get you. I was looking at the wrong patch of trees. The applicant's right behind you. Come on up to the mic.
I really do want to be a good neighbor. I just asked the civil engineer, if we could narrow the pond on the western side and make it a little bit longer to the south to give us the same volume that we need, but we could add some trees in that area where there's pond right now. I think it's about a half an acre, so somewhere in that range. But I would be willing to have our civil engineer work with staff to find a way to fit a few more trees over there.
Much appreciated. As far as the berm height goes, I'm not familiar with Reinhardt's berm, so I won't speculate how tall it is. The berms typically, are kind of put in with the vegetation to go up, and the higher the berm, the wider the berm has to be. And if I'm wrong from engineering's point of view, let me know. And then, of course, it starts to hinder on the roads, the parking, and how much land they have to work with. So that may have had something to do as well as the stormwater management to the height of those berms. I don't know if it's physically possible to make them any higher, quite frankly. I do understand, what you're saying. That building will probably stand 20-some feet in height, I would think. 30, so 30 feet in height. I'm not making excuses, but depending on your line of sight, where you're looking up towards the horizon is really what you're going to see. I can't speak to the trees that would go in there. I would think it'd be a mix of maple trees, but most likely a lot of evergreens, which on average grow about a foot a year. So I don't know what the average is, probably 6 foot to begin with, somewhere in that neighborhood, but I'm guessing. Throwing a lot of numbers out there, and I probably shouldn't be doing that, but that's typically what I've seen in the past and similar things. Carrie?
We do have junipers. I don't have I apologize. It looks like the landscape plans didn't make it into your packets, so I apologize for that. It appears that there's a line of juniper trees, which are the tall evergreens. Those are if I remember correctly, I think those are going to be installed at a height of 6 feet. We do have a minimum caliper requirement depending on the type of tree. Evergreens are, they're used for screening, so they'll be taller. The caliper of the other trees is going to be 1.5 to 2.5, depending on the type. Okay. So the caliper is the trunk size. It's not the canopy size. So it does give them a chance to grow and fill out and, produce leaves and things like that. But looks like at least 10 junipers that are in a line on the south with additional evergreens, although I can't make them out at this time.
And I'm no expert, but the junipers get pretty decent height, and if they're up on the berm, I don't know, they probably get 10 foot at least, better. So I mean, we're talking about over half the height of the building, but again, I think it's your line of sight that you're really looking at. Regarding the fence, we're not requiring a fence around that pond at this particular time. There's always options as well. Again, I don't mean this in a catty way, but you can always fence your yard as well if it isn't. So, yes, sir.
Wayne Majeski again, 10220 South Judith Place. I just have a question just on the building and stuff. Is there any way that possible and stuff, maybe we could flip-flop the sides of the building so the docks could be on the north side of the building and the pedestrian parking on the south side? So see how the building is, just flip-flop it so the docks would be on that side and then the car parking would be on our side.
I understand what you're saying.
Because that's.
But we consider the front address to be off of Ridgeview, which would be the front of the building. So we're not going to allow front of the buildings to have that number of loading docks going forward.
Okay, because I know like Reinhardt, they got their loading docks on the other side of the building. And they got their truck parking on the back side and stuff.
It's unfortunate. Again, and the docks are in there. We know what a third of the building is going to be. The applicant has spoken to that.
Yeah.
He can address how many trucks he brings in weekly. But again, it sounded like more storage than anything, but I'll let him speak to that.
Yeah.
And until we get an applicant.
Well, the biggest thing is I see a problem with the noises and stuff. You got an overnight truck driver that's going to come deliver in the morning or something. He's going to park there or something.
I
loud
get it,
pipes or whatever.
but we're speculating. For all we know,
Yeah.
it could turn into manufacturing office.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
So
that's just a question.
Yeah, okay. And maybe the applicant can speak to that as well. But again, we know what a third of the building is, and he might know what his truck volume is currently. But again, we're guessing at the rest of it. So you had a few things. You had the fence, the trees, and the berm. Was there one more she had? Okay, well, to the best of my ability, whether it was satisfactory or not, that's what I got for you for answers.
We have seen other developments where they do put a fence around the pond. It's not a code requirement for zoning purposes, however.
Right, so, we can't enforce it from that point of view. It would be up to the applicant to do that. Where do we see it at? The post office? I think they fenced it.
There are a couple of places that have
Couple.
fence ponds.
So, not out of the question there without a doubt, but safety is paramount.
John Schluter, Frontline. I apologize. I thought there was a fence around the pond, and there will be a fence around the pond, and you can write that in. I apologize.
Thank you, John. Well, ask and you shall receive, I guess. Well, that's really a positive. Worth your night coming in just for that alone. The parking, I don't know if I touched on the parking. Again, a lot of speculation. We know where a third of it's going to be, and John feels it's adequate. So for roughly, what is this building? 430,000 square foot, 460. We're talking about almost 130,000 square foot's accounted for. We know what that parking's going to be. So we got to leave the other 2/3. A little bit on faith, and if they would run out of parking, the only other options, we're a little tight on green space here, but fortunately there is, off of Ridgeview, there is a vacant lot that if they really needed to acquire, they possibly could for any type of expansion or parking in the future. And that's an option, whether they want to do that or not, but I think we kind of cross that depending on what comes in. We could see a very large automated plant that maybe does not have the required parking for employees that's needed. We're seeing very big buildings go in, being manned by very few employees, sometimes based on the business. So it's hard to guess with a building like that. If we had the tenant in, we'd know better. Greg, you got something?
I guess I just want, this is the tree inventory, correct? The green is staying, the red are being removed. If you can see that.
Correct, yes.
So there are, that southwest corner does have some mature trees that look like they're staying. Definitely not enough to screen, but there are going to be some taller trees that remain in that area. So hopefully they can put more, as he suggested. But there still will be a few mature trees that exist there.
And the corner itself, we cannot propose that they put any trees in the actual corner because of the utility easement that's there. So that's a 40-foot wide easement that is not exactly something that we can require them to do. The berm itself, though, and along the pond edge on the western edge of the pond portion, we can take a look at and work with the applicant, like they said, on locating more trees there.
So I guess from that point of view, I'm okay. Is there any further discussion? Any questions arise in our discussions from commissioners or anybody in the audience? Yes, ma'am. Name and address, please.
Sure. Stacy Seekert, 10132 South Judith Place. And we didn't talk about it too much today, so I don't know if this is separate. As far as lighting goes, I did hear you guys say that it might be like 3,500 Kelvin, maybe with shields. Do we know more what that will look like or not yet?
Well, the lighting code's very specific, and I'll let Carrie belt out the numbers so I don't get it wrong.
Sure.
But it will follow our current ordinance.
So on the
Carrie?
south, they're limited to 3,500 Kelvin. So that'll be the maximum that they'll be allowed on the south. And code requires that all the lights be directed downward, so toward the ground, and shielded on the side facing the residential portion of their building or of their parking lot. So those are code requirements. They'll have to do that. 3,500 Kelvin is kind of a residential, and it because we're all talking about LED lights, it may appear to be like bright, but what we're talking about is color temperature. So the more bright it is, so to speak, the higher the kelvins, the higher the color temperature, the more it's that blue light, that kind of harsher, more daylight type light. This is a little bit softer.
Okay. And just one thing to keep in mind with the lights, you're currently looking at a space with no lights. It will appear to have more lights because there are going to be lights there. So, just so you're not shocked. But thank you for that, Carrie. Okay, if there's no further discussion, motion on 8A.
Lorick moves to approve the site and building plans submitted by John Schluter, Frontline Commercial Real Estate, for a multi-tenant industrial building on the properties at 9970, 120, and 140 South 20th Street, and a portion of 1850 West Oakwood Road with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that the certified survey map approved by the Common Council on December 19th, 2023 is recorded prior to submission of permit applications. 3, that all approvals and/or permits from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources are submitted to the Engineering Department and Department of Community Development prior to submission of permit applications. Substantive changes to the site and/or building as a result of the Wisconsin DNR approvals and/or permits shall require a new review and approval by the Plan Commission prior to submission of permit applications. 4, that the plans are revised to relocate the southwest trash enclosure away from the residential properties to the south or eliminated. Revised plans shall include elevations and dimensions for the trash enclosure. 5, that the landscape plans are revised to meet code requirements. 6, that the plans are revised to include locations for all mechanicals, transformers, and utilities. All mechanical equipment, transformers, and utility boxes, ground building, and rooftop shall be screened from view. 7, all light sources shall be full cutoff fixtures with the light source fully shielded and directed downward. The color temperature of the non-building mounted fixtures shall be limited to a maximum of 3,500 kelvins on the south and 5,000 kelvins on the remainder of the property. Shields shall be on the side facing residential properties. 8, that all revised plans, site building, landscaping, etc. are submitted in digital format for review by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call beginning with Dawn.
Grillo, aye.
Ibchinsky, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye. Aldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Okay. Thank you very much. Moving right along, we will go to item 8B, plan review for site, building, and related plans submitted by Aldi Inc. for an addition to the existing building on the properties at 9210, 9250 South 13th. And Melanie is going to take this one.
Thank you. So currently on 9210 and 9150 South 13th, it's zoned M1 and floodway. For this development, there is no concern for the floodway as it won't be near it. Aldi is looking to add a just under 50,000 square foot perishable food storage to the north of their site. With the site as a whole, all the parcels together, the addition will meet all the setback requirements. Later on, I'll talk about a modification request for the elevations. Here is a site plan that shows the existing building. This is the northern portion and the proposed expansion. There's going to be about 9 loading docks on the eastern side. This will be the east and west elevation. On the top, we'll have visuals of the 9 loading docks. The west will only have 2 entrance doors for the staff. To the north, they are asking for a modification request to allow deviation from code. It will be made of 6-inch insulated textured metal panels. There's a requirement for Plan Commission approval for more than 15 to 25%. So they are looking for that approval from you guys under your discretion.
Here is the landscape plan. They are going to be expanding the northern wet pond more northeast. It is good to note that they are proposing to fill a wetland, and we will need to receive any permits for that from the DNR. And with that, I have a suggested motion.
Melanie. Before we go to the commission, does the applicant like to say anything, or you want to wait on questions? Name and address, please, sir.
Mark Seidel, Pinnacle Engineering Group, 20725 Watertown Road in Brookfield. Civil engineer for the project. We have some folks with the design builder and the applicant here to answer any questions. If there's anything technical, I'd be more than happy to answer those as well. So, here to answer.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go to the commission. Fred, you want to start us off?
No questions at this time.
Okay, Don, you're still paging through. You got anything, or you want me to come on back? Okay. Chris?
I have no questions at this time.
Okay. Greg?
Where is this in relation to what's currently going on there or being built there? Do you know?
The proposed addition is on the north. What the work that's going on right now is on the west side of the property
Okay.
and south.
Okay. And the metal panel portion that you showed, that's the north side of the building?
That's correct.
And that's facing directly towards residential neighborhood, isn't it?
There's some distance between that and the residential neighborhood. I believe there's also a berm at the northern end, but yes, it's currently a metal panel similar to what's being proposed.
Okay, thanks.
Ashley?
Engineering's had the opportunity to review some of the modifications to the stormwater pond. We don't see any issues with any of that.
Questions?
Christine?
Yeah, since you mentioned that some of this going to be facing some neighborhood, have they expressed any issues similar to the trucking companies, or have they been notified?
The residents to the north have been included if they are within 300 feet of the proposal. So they would have been notified. We did not receive any comments from them.
Okay, all right, that's it, thank you.
Fire?
Sorry for the long stroll up here. Again, Mike Havey with Fire. Site plan is okay with fire department. Actually, it gives us more access than we had previously around the site, so no issues from fire.
As far as it goes with me, the north side, the corrugated panels, I would imagine they will be painted to match the current building as it is. And it's my understanding it's corrugated on the north currently on what they're adding on to. Am I correct with that? So, no harm, no foul there as far as I'm concerned. I believe there's a farm field, if not one older resident kind of farmhouse. It's a bit away to get to the residential neighborhood, actually, if you take a look at it. They're a pretty fair distance there. The west side, is that going to be corrugated as well? And is the building a tip-up cement product currently the existing? Does anyone know?
I'm just going to turn it over to the design builder here, and he'll be able to answer that question.
I think we have multiple building materials on different elevations, but I will turn it over to the expert.
Name and address, please.
Carl Moore, Sam King, 1610 East Moorhead, Charlotte, North Carolina. There are multiple building skins on the west side. The original construction was a brick veneer. An expansion back in 2014 was painted concrete panel, and for a portion of it, and then the other portion was the same insulated metal panel product for the freezer that was expanded back then.
And this is housing perishable food.
Frozen food is the
Okay, so it's dry product?
Nope, dry product. It'll be, the expansion is 100% freezer with the exception of the dock area, which would be at plus 34 degrees.
Okay. It's gonna be painted as well to match existing.
It's a pre-finished panel that will match the same color as what the existing panels are.
Okay. Not crazy about it, but I understand. You know, if it's doing perishable goods and it's refrigerated, I understand why the material's being used. So, okay, Don, I'm coming back to you.
No, I don't have any questions. I was just kind of trying to get a feel of how big this is. It's yeah, we're not talking much here. If you look at that retaining pond to the, there we go. Right, that's fine right there. Would that be to the south? You could see. I think maybe some people may have thought it was going to take up all that open space. It's really just basically meeting the tip of the pond there, so I don't have any issues as far as the neighbors are concerned.
Okay.
One quick comment on that.
Yes.
That's the grading plan, which slopes up. That hill is almost going to equal the building height, so you really won't see it. I believe there was line of sight attachments.
Yeah,
in
the
packet.
topography drops off pretty significantly there at the Aldi property, if I remember correctly.
A lot of dirt to cut.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, motion?
Lorick moves to approve site building and related plans submitted by Adam Castle, Aldi Inc. for the properties at 9210 and 9150 South 13th Street with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that this is the final addition approval without going through the certified survey map process to combine the properties at this site. 3, that all light sources are shielded and directed downward, and that the color temperature of the fixtures are limited to a maximum of 5,000 kelvins on the east side and west side, and a maximum of 3,500 kelvins on the north side. 4, that all Wisconsin DNR permits are provided to the city. 5, that the plans are revised to include locations and screening for any new mechanical equipment, transformers, and utilities. And 6, that all revised plans are submitted in digital format for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of permit applications.
Guzikowski will second.
Roll call, beginning with Ashley.
Chinsky, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye. Oldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Hannah, aye.
Carrillo, aye.
All right, and that will lead us right into adjournment. So, motion, please.
Carrillo moves to adjourn at 7:02.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call, beginning with Greg.
Lorick, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzikowski, aye. Oldani.
Seifert, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Hannah, aye.
Carrillo, aye.
Kipchinsky, aye.
All right, good night, everybody.